The German shepherd's howl shattered the funeral silence, a primal sound that froze every mourner mid-motion. Atlas lunged against his leash, eyes fixed on the polished mahogany coffin that supposedly held his handler. It wasn't grief the dog was expressing. It was denial. "Dear Lord," whispered Martha Mitchell, her wrinkled hand clutching her heart as the service descended into chaos. Officer Wilson dropped his hat, scrambling to control the straining animal whose claws scraped desperately against the coffin's edge. Chief Garrison had seen Atlas with Logan every day for 2 years, the dog who wouldn't leave his partner's side for anything, and something in the animal's desperate keening struck him as more than mere animal grief. The same dog who had found survivors beneath tons of rubble couldn't be wrong about this. "Open it," he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of 30 years of authority while his hands trembled. What horror or miracle would they find inside Logan Mitchell's coffin? Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Logan Mitchell had never intended to work with a dog. After 15 years on patrol in Somerville, Arizona, the 34-year-old officer was content with his routine: morning coffee at Daisy's Diner, afternoon patrols through neighborhoods where he knew every family, and quiet evenings alone in the modest ranch house he'd inherited from his father. It was a life carefully constructed to maintain control, to avoid the unexpected that had stolen his wife Sarah on that September morning in 2001 when she was visiting her brother in New York. But Chief Walter Garrison had other plans. "The K-9 unit needs experienced officers," he'd told Logan that spring morning 2 years ago, his weathered face creased with the gentle authority that came from having served with Logan's father decades earlier. "And this dog needs someone special." Atlas wasn't just any police dog. The sable German Shepherd had a distinguished record in search and rescue before developing what the department called handler selectivity issues after his previous partner died in the line of duty. 3 officers had tried working with him. All 3 had requested transfers within weeks. "He's got trust issues," the trainer explained when Logan first approached the kennel. "But incredible instincts, best nose I've ever seen, just won't bond with anyone new." Atlas had watched Logan with suspicious amber eyes, a distinctive scar over his right eye giving him an almost mythological appearance. The dog hadn't growled or barked. He simply observed, assessing this new human with a detachment that seemed almost deliberate. Logan recognized that look. He saw it in his own mirror every morning. Meanwhile, in Sacramento, Martha Mitchell was facing her own battles. At 78, Logan's mother maintained her independence with stubborn determination, despite the heart condition that required increasingly expensive medications. Their Sunday phone calls had a careful choreography. She never mentioned her health, he never mentioned his loneliness, and both pretended the arrangement was sustainable. The department's transfer to K-9 came with a modest pay increase, enough, Logan calculated, to help with Martha's medical bills if he cut back elsewhere. He didn't tell her this when she called to hear about his new position, instead focusing on Atlas's impressive record. "Animals know things we don't," Martha had said. "Your grandfather always claimed his hunting dog knew when storms were coming before any weatherman." Logan hadn't expected much from his partnership with Atlas. The dog would perform his duties, Logan would provide care and direction, and they would maintain a professional distance, much like his relationships with human colleagues. What Logan couldn't have anticipated was Victor Blackwood's arrival 6 months later. The 40-year-old transfer from Phoenix brought impressive credentials, charismatic leadership, and a shadow of secrets that would eventually engulf them all. None of them, not Logan, not Atlas, not even perceptive Martha during her brief visit, recognized the danger Victor carried. The calculated hatred, the patient plan for vengeance, the identity hidden behind a changed name and carefully constructed background. By the time they would discover the truth, it would almost be too late. The first few weeks with Atlas were a study in mutual wariness. Logan would arrive at the canine facility each morning at precisely 6:15, his travel mug of black coffee cooling in the cup holder of his department SUV. Atlas would be waiting in his kennel, alert and watchful, but maintaining a deliberate distance. Dogs can sense hesitation, Sergeant Phelps, the veteran canine trainer, explained during their third training session. He's reading you just as much as you're reading him. Logan nodded, trying not to show his frustration as Atlas performed each command perfectly, but without enthusiasm, his amber eyes watching Logan with what seemed like professional detachment rather than partnership. "We're making progress," Phelps insisted, though his tone suggested otherwise. The truth was, Logan recognized something in Atlas that felt uncomfortably familiar, a reluctance to connect, to trust, to risk the inevitable pain that came with attachment. After losing Sarah in the Twin Towers, Logan had mastered the art of functional solitude. His colleagues respected him, the community trusted him, but no one really knew him. Not anymore. "You two are perfect for each other," Chief Garrison observed after observing a training session. "Both stubborn as hell and afraid to admit you need anybody." Logan had bristled at this assessment. "I'm not afraid, Chief. I just prefer working alone." Garrison's knowing look had followed Logan all the way to his car. That evening, Logan called his mother as he did every Sunday. Martha Mitchell's voice carried the slight breathlessness that had become more pronounced in recent months, though she dismissed his concerns. "Just the heat, honey. Sacramento summers aren't getting any cooler, and neither am I." "The doctor appointment went fine," she interrupted. "Now tell me about this dog of yours." "Have you won him over yet?" Logan described Atlas's impressive work skills while omitting their interpersonal challenges. "He's smart. Probably smarter than half the department. Including you?" Martha chuckled. "Jury's still out," Logan admitted with a rare smile. After hanging up, Logan reviewed his finances, calculating how much he could send to Martha's account without her noticing. The property tax bill lay unopened on his counter. His father's house, their family home, needed a new roof, but that would have to wait. Martha's medications came first. The following day, Logan and Atlas responded to their first emergency call, a missing elderly man with dementia who had wandered from his assisted living facility. Despite their still developing rapport, Atlas worked the scene methodically, tracking the man's scent through a nearby park and ultimately locating him napping peacefully under an oak tree. They would start around 2 a.m., the hour when memories of Sarah often ambushed him, with restless tossing before escalating to cold sweats and racing heartbeats. The dreams varied but always ended the same. Logan running toward someone he couldn't save, his legs impossibly heavy, his voice failing him. He blamed the new job stress and kept it to himself. In late August, Martha called outside their normal Sunday schedule. "Everything okay?" Logan asked immediately, tension evident in his voice. "Fine, fine," she assured him, though her voice sounded thin. "I just wanted to tell you I'm selling some of my old jewelry. Nothing important, just things gathering dust." Logan knew what this meant. The medications were getting more expensive. "Mom, I can help." "Absolutely not," she interrupted firmly. "I'm not calling about money. I found an old photo of your father with his service dog. Did you know he worked with the canine unit for a while?" Logan hadn't known this. His father, a career police officer who died of a heart attack shortly after Logan joined the force, had rarely spoken about his early years on the job. "It was before he met me," Martha continued. "Her name was Stella, a beautiful German shepherd, just like your Atlas." Something about this coincidence or continuation settled into Logan's chest. That night he dreamed not of Sarah but of his father, young and strong, standing beside a proud shepherd. For once, he slept through until morning. The department's annual physical fitness test fell in early September. Logan, always methodical about maintaining his conditioning, completed the obstacle course, strength tests, and endurance run with his usual competent performance. What surprised him was how intently Atlas watched from the sidelines, his focus unwavering as Logan pushed through the final sprint. "He's interested in you," Sergeant Phelps noted. "That's progress." The breakthrough, when it came, arrived unexpectedly. "Somebody's glad to see you." Logan downplayed the moment, but something had undeniably changed. During that day's training exercises, Atlas worked with new energy, his responses sharper, his attention more focused on Logan than on the tasks themselves. That evening, Logan paused before returning Atlas to the kennel. "Want to see where I live?" he asked, feeling slightly foolish for speaking to the dog as though he might understand the significance of the invitation. Atlas tilted his head, ears forward. Logan's house was nothing special, a single-story ranch-style home built in the 1970s with a modest yard and practical furnishings. He'd maintained it meticulously, but made few changes since inheriting it, as though keeping his father's home intact might somehow preserve something of the man himself. Atlas entered cautiously, systematically investigating each room while Logan stood awkwardly in the living room, suddenly aware of how long it had been since he'd had a visitor. In the spare bedroom, Atlas paused at a cardboard box labeled Sarah in careful block letters. "That's my wife," Logan said quietly. "She died a long time ago." Atlas looked at him, then back at the box as though connecting these pieces of Logan's life. In the kitchen, Logan filled a bowl with water and set it on the floor. "You can stay tonight if you want. There's a bed." He gestured toward the unused dog bed in the corner of the living room. Atlas drank, then walked to the front door, sitting expectantly. Logan felt a strange disappointment. "Okay, back to the kennel then." Their routine continued through the fall, though Logan began bringing Atlas home occasionally, first for an evening, then a weekend. The dog remained professional, vigilant, but the sharp edge of his wariness gradually softened. In October, Martha called with news that sent a chill through Logan despite the lingering Arizona heat. "The doctor wants to try a new medication," she said, her attempt at casualness not quite concealing her worry. "Insurance covers some, but—" She trailed off. "How much, Mom?" The figure she reluctantly shared would strain even Logan's careful budget. He immediately began calculating what else he could cut, which bills he could defer. "I'll figure it out," Martha said firmly. "I've been thinking about downsizing anyway." Logan wanted to protest, but knew his mother's pride. Instead, he promised to visit soon, though both knew his department's staffing shortage made time off unlikely. The following week brought Somerville's annual Fall Festival, a community tradition that required additional security due to increased tourism. Logan and Atlas were assigned to patrol the crowded main street, where vendors sold everything from handmade quilts to local honey. It was there that Logan first noticed Rebecca Collins. She was staffing the medical tent, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, her movements efficient as she bandaged a child's scraped knee. Logan recognized her as one of the ER doctors from Somerville Regional, though they'd never formally met. What caught his attention wasn't her appearance, but rather Atlas's reaction to her. The normally reserved dog actually pulled slightly toward the medical tent, his tail giving a single, subtle wag. "Traitor," Logan muttered, though without real annoyance. Later, when a teenager fainted from heat exhaustion near their position, Logan and Atlas assisted in clearing space for the paramedics. Dr. Collins arrived moments later, her clinical assessment swift and reassuring. "Your dog knew something was wrong before we did," she remarked to Logan afterward. "He was looking at the boy before he collapsed." "He notices things," Logan replied. "Smart partner to have." She smiled, extending her hand. "Rebecca Collins." Emergency Department. Logan Mitchell, K-9 Unit. He shook her hand briefly, aware of Atlas watching their interaction with unusual interest. It was a brief encounter, professional and unremarkable. Yet Logan found himself thinking about it later that evening. There had been something in her direct gaze that suggested a person who saw more than she said, a quality he'd come to value in his nonverbal partner. November brought cooler temperatures and a department announcement. Due to budget adjustments, the K-9 unit would be expanding, with a new handler transferring from Phoenix in December. Victor Blackwood, Chief Garrison told Logan during their weekly briefing. Excellent record, specialized in arson investigation. His K-9 partner is retiring, so he'll be training with a new dog. Logan nodded, unconcerned. The department's 3 existing K-9 officers operated fairly independently, crossing paths mainly during training sessions. "I'd like you to help him settle in," Garrison continued. "Your evaluations have been impressive. You and Atlas have become one of our strongest teams despite the rocky start." The praise caught Logan off guard. He'd been so focused on the daily work that he hadn't fully registered how much had changed between him and Atlas in just a few months. That night, he brought Atlas home again. The dog no longer headed straight for the door after dinner, but instead settled on the rug in the living room while Logan reviewed case files. Occasionally, Atlas would lift his head when Logan sighed or muttered about paperwork, those intelligent eyes seeming to offer silent commiseration. Just before Thanksgiving, Martha called with news that made Logan's stomach tighten. She'd been hospitalized briefly after a little episode. "The doctors are overreacting," she insisted. "Chief asked me to show you around." Victor Blackwood. The handshake was firm, professional. "Heard good things about your work with Atlas, right?" Something flickered across Victor's face when he said the dog's name, a micro-expression Logan couldn't quite identify. Recognition? Discomfort? It passed too quickly to interpret. Atlas, standing at Logan's side, studied the newcomer with unusual intensity. "He's not big on strangers," Logan explained, noticing Atlas's stiffened posture. "Dogs are excellent judges of character," Victor replied with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'm sure we'll get along fine once he knows me better." But in the weeks that followed, Atlas maintained a noticeable distance from Victor. Despite the new officer's apparently friendly overtures, Logan attributed it to the dog's established wariness of newcomers, though he couldn't help noticing that Atlas had accepted other recent department additions without issue. By mid-December, Logan and Atlas had developed a comfortable routine that now included most nights at Logan's home. The unused dog bed had migrated from the living room corner to a spot beside Logan's bed, though Atlas only occasionally used it, seeming to prefer patrolling the house several times during the night before settling. Logan no longer woke to nightmares as frequently. On the rare occasions when the dreams did come, he often found Atlas alert beside him, a solid presence in the darkness. They were becoming a team, just as Sergeant Phelps had predicted. Not through dramatic bonding moments, but through the quiet accumulation of shared experiences, mutual respect, and growing trust. What Logan couldn't know was how crucial this bond would become in the months ahead, or how it would ultimately save his life in ways neither man nor dog could possibly imagine. The call came in at 3:17 p.m. on a Wednesday in late May. A 10-year-old girl named Lily Sanchez had wandered away from her family during a hiking trip at Grand Canyon National Park. With temperatures expected to drop significantly after sunset and treacherous terrain throughout the search area, Rangers had requested assistance from regional K-9 units specialized in search and rescue. Logan and Atlas were halfway through their shift when Chief Garrison called them into his office. "They need experienced teams," he explained, pointing to a map spread across his desk. "The girl's been missing for nearly 4 hours. She was last seen near Bright Angel Trail." Within 20 minutes, Logan and Atlas were in a department helicopter. The German Shepherd calmed despite the noise and vibration that would have unsettled most dogs. This wasn't their first emergency deployment, but the combination of fading daylight and the dangerous canyon environment added urgency that Logan felt in his gut. Park rangers met them at a makeshift command center where the girl's distraught parents clutched a pink windbreaker. "She was wearing this earlier," Mrs. Sanchez explained, her voice cracking. "She took it off when it got warm." Logan nodded, accepting the garment and allowing Atlas to thoroughly scent it. The German Shepherd's entire demeanor shifted as he processed the information, his body language becoming focused, purposeful. "We'll find her," Logan assured the parents, though years on the force had taught him never to make promises he couldn't guarantee. As they prepared to join the search teams, Logan noticed a familiar figure approaching. Victor Blackwood had also been deployed with his new K-9 partner, a young Belgian Malinois named Rex. "Mitchell," Victor acknowledged with a nod. "They're assigning us to the eastern quadrant. You're taking the ridge line to the north." There was something in Victor's tone that struck Logan as odd, a subtle undercurrent he couldn't quite identify. But with a missing child and daylight fading, there wasn't time to dwell on interpersonal nuances. The search area was challenging, steep inclines, narrow paths, and countless places where a small girl might have wandered off trail. Logan followed Atlas, who worked methodically, pausing occasionally to reorient himself against the wind that carried scents in unpredictable patterns through the canyon's natural corridors. 2 hours in, with the sun now touching the western rim, Atlas's behavior changed. His movements became more purposeful, his tail slightly raised, indicators that he had detected something promising. Logan radioed their position to command center and continued following his partner's lead. The path narrowed as they approached a section where recent rainfall had created unstable conditions. Warning signs advised hikers to avoid the area, but a child in a hurry or unfamiliar with the terrain might have missed them. Atlas paused at a fork in the trail, his nose working the air currents before he turned decisively toward the restricted path. Logan followed cautiously, noting how the ground showed signs of recent disturbance, small footprints visible in the still damp soil. "Good boy," he murmured, reaching for his radio again to update their progress. That's when they heard it, a faint cry carried on the wind. Atlas's ears pricked forward, his entire body tensing with alertness. "Lily?" Logan called out. "Lily Sanchez?" The response was faint but unmistakable. "Help! I'm here!" Following Atlas, who now moved with urgent purpose, Logan rounded a bend to discover a small ledge that had partially collapsed. 10 feet below, a section of rock formed a small shelf where Lily sat huddled against the canyon wall, her legs drawn up to her chest. "Are you hurt?" Logan called down, immediately assessing the situation. "My ankle," she replied, her voice small but clear. "I can't climb back up." The ledge where Logan and Atlas stood showed signs of instability. Recent erosion had undermined its structural integrity. Calling for backup would be the protocol, but Logan could see the shelf where Lily was trapped had also begun to crumble. The approaching darkness and her vulnerable position made waiting risky. "I'm Officer Mitchell, and this is Atlas," he said calmly. "We're going to get you out of there, but I need you to stay very still, okay?" Logan secured a line to a sturdy rock formation and prepared to descend to Lily's position. Atlas watched intently, his body language communicating clear agitation at being left behind. "Stay," Logan commanded firmly. "I need you up here." The descent was tricky. Loose material showered down with each movement despite Logan's care. When he reached Lily, he found a frightened but remarkably composed child. "You have a dog," she observed, her eyes moving to Atlas, who maintained his position above, vigilantly watching their every move. "Best partner in the department," Logan confirmed as he checked her injured ankle. Swollen, but likely just a sprain. let's get you harnessed up." The extraction plan was straightforward. Secure Lily in the rescue harness, then use the mechanical advantage system Logan had set up to lift her to safety while he stabilized her from below. Once she was secure, he would climb up after her. Logan had just finished securing Lily in the harness when a subtle vibration ran through the rock shelf beneath them. A few pebbles skittered over the edge, disappearing into the growing darkness below. "We need to move now," he told Lily, keeping his voice steady despite the spike of adrenaline. "Hold on to the rope, not the rock face. When you get to the top, my partner Atlas will be there." "Will your dog bite me?" she asked, her eyes wide. "No, but he might lick you to death," Logan replied with a reassuring smile. The lift began smoothly, Lily rising slowly toward the ledge above where Atlas watched intently. Logan maintained tension on the guideline, ensuring she didn't swing into the canyon wall. When she was almost to the top, Logan felt, rather than heard, the shift. A deep, geological settling, as the compromised rock shelf beneath him adjusted to changing weight distribution. More concerning was the simultaneous movement from the ledge above, where a section near Atlas began to fracture. "Atlas, back!" Logan shouted, seeing the danger before the dog did. Atlas retreated just as a portion of the ledge edge crumbled away, sending cascading debris down toward Logan. Most of it missed him, but a sizable rock glanced off his shoulder, nearly causing him to lose his grip on the guideline. Above, he could see Lily had reached safety, scrambling away from the edge with Atlas circling her protectively. Logan began his own ascent, acutely aware of the deteriorating stability beneath him. Halfway up, the remaining section of the rock shelf collapsed completely, the sudden movement creating a ripple effect that loosened Logan's primary anchor point. The rope jerked violently, swinging him against the canyon wall with enough force to knock the wind from his lungs. Dazed and now hanging precariously from a compromised anchor, Logan struggled to regain his orientation. His right arm had taken the brunt of the impact and responded sluggishly to commands. Above, he could hear Lily's frightened cries. "Atlas, get help!" he called up, hoping the dog would understand the urgency. But Atlas made a different calculation. Instead of retreating to find assistance, the German Shepherd cautiously approached the crumbling edge, seemingly assessing the situation with an intelligence that transcended training. "Back, Atlas!" Logan ordered sharply, fearing the dog would be caught in a secondary collapse. What happened next would later be described in the official report as Exceptional K9 Initiative. Atlas disappeared from view momentarily, then returned, dragging the emergency rope bag Logan had left behind in his original position. With methodical precision, the dog used his teeth to pull out additional rope, then secured the loose end around a sturdy juniper tree several feet back from the unstable edge. Logan watched in disbelief as his partner essentially created a secondary safety line, not through human understanding of rescue techniques, but through observation, association, and some innate comprehension of Logan's peril. "Good boy," Logan breathed, reaching for the new line with his functioning arm. The next few minutes passed in a blur of pain and focused determination. Using the secondary line Atlas had provided, Logan managed to stabilize his position and slowly continue his ascent despite his injured shoulder. When he finally pulled himself over the edge onto solid ground, he collapsed onto his back, breathing heavily. Atlas was immediately beside him, inspecting his condition with intense focus, while Lily watched wide-eyed from her position several feet away. "Your dog saved you," she said with the simple clarity of childhood. "Yeah," Logan agreed, meeting Atlas's amber gaze. "He did." By the time the backup teams located them, guided by the GPS coordinates Logan had transmitted earlier, he had splinted Lily's ankle with supplies from his pack and wrapped his own shoulder as best he could. The rescue helicopter that arrived shortly after used a hoist system to extract all three of them from the precarious location. At the command center, Lily was reunited with her tearful parents while Logan received medical attention for his shoulder, a severe contusion but thankfully not dislocated or broken. "You took an unnecessary risk," Chief Garrison told him later at the hospital, though his gruff tone couldn't quite mask his pride. "But you got the job done." Logan nodded, too exhausted to explain how the situation's urgency had demanded immediate action. Besides, his thoughts were occupied elsewhere, with the dog who had remained eerily calm throughout the medical examinations, refusing to leave Logan's side despite the unfamiliar hospital environment. "The staff wants to know if your partner would like a bowl of water," a nurse asked, eyeing Atlas with respectful caution. "He's fine," Logan replied automatically, then reconsidered. "Actually, yes. Thank you." It was well past midnight when they were finally cleared to leave, Logan's shoulder heavily bandaged and a prescription for pain medication in his pocket. The department had sent an officer to drive them back to Somerville, but Logan found himself strangely reluctant to return to the K-9 facility. "I'm taking Atlas home tonight," he informed the officer. "He's earned it." At Logan's house, Atlas conducted his usual security patrol of the rooms before settling not on his bed but directly beside Logan's, his body positioned between the bed and the door as though standing guard. "Thank you," Logan said quietly in the darkness. The words felt insufficient for what had transpired on that canyon ledge, for the moment when understanding had passed between them without commands or training protocols. Atlas lifted his head slightly, acknowledging Logan's voice, then resumed his vigilant posture. That night marked a transformation in their partnership. The mutual wariness that had characterized their early days together had been replaced by something Logan had not experienced since losing Sarah: complete trust in another living being. The following morning, still moving gingerly from his injury, Logan called his mother. "The news is saying you rescued a little girl at the Grand Canyon," Martha said immediately. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Mom," Logan assured her. But it was Atlas who did the real rescuing. He described what had happened, his voice catching slightly when he recounted how Atlas had created the secondary safety line. "Animals know things," Martha replied softly, echoing her earlier wisdom. "Your father always said a good dog will give its life for you without hesitation. That's a rare kind of loyalty." After hanging up, Logan found Atlas watching him from the doorway, alert and ready despite their eventful night. "Day off," Logan told him, gesturing to his bandaged shoulder. "Doctor's orders." But rather than settling down, Atlas moved to the front door, his body language suggesting he wanted to go out. Assuming the dog needed a bathroom break, Logan opened the door, only to find Victor Blackwood on his porch, hand raised to knock. "Mitchell?" Victor greeted him, his eyes moving to the bandaged shoulder. "Heard about your adventure yesterday. Thought I'd check in." There was something oddly formal about the visit that struck Logan as out of place. He and Victor had maintained a strictly professional relationship since the man's arrival 6 months earlier. "Thanks," Logan replied, not bothering to hide his surprise. "We're doing fine." Victor's attention shifted to Atlas, who had positioned himself partially between the two men, his posture alert but not aggressive. "Remarkable animal. The department's talking about a commendation." "He was just doing his job," Logan said, uncomfortable with the attention. "Was he?" Victor's gaze was unreadable. "From what I heard, he went well beyond training protocols, almost like he had a personal stake in your survival." The comment hung in the air, seemingly innocent yet carrying an undertone that raised Logan's instinctive caution. "Did you need something specific?" Logan asked, suddenly aware of Atlas's increasing tension. Victor smiled, the expression not quite reaching his eyes. "Just being neighborly. We're colleagues, after all." He glanced past Logan into the house. Nice place. Lived here long? All my life, Logan replied, deliberately not elaborating. It was my parents' house. Something flickered across Victor's face, a micro-expression Logan couldn't interpret. Family roots. Important thing. He took a step back. Well, I should let you rest. See you when you're back on duty. As Victor walked to his car, Logan noticed Atlas watching the man with unusual intensity, tracking his movements until the vehicle disappeared down the street. "What is it, buddy?" Logan asked quietly. Atlas turned to look at him, then back at the now empty street, as though trying to communicate something beyond his canine capabilities. That evening, Logan received another unexpected visitor, Dr. Rebecca Collins, whose surprise was evident when Atlas greeted her with unprecedented friendliness. "I was just dropping off some follow-up care instructions," she explained, handing Logan a department envelope. "The hospital sometimes forgets to include everything." The pretense seemed thin. Medical instructions could have been emailed, but Logan found himself oddly pleased by her presence. "Would you like to come in?" he offered, surprising himself. "I was just about to make coffee." Rebecca hesitated only briefly. "I can't stay long, but coffee sounds great." In his kitchen, which suddenly seemed too small and too personal, Logan awkwardly managed the coffee maker one-handed while Rebecca commented on his house. "It has character," she observed. "You can tell it's been a home, not just a house. My parents bought it when my dad joined the force," Logan explained. "I grew up here. And now it's you and Atlas," she noted, watching the dog who had settled nearby, still keeping Logan in his sightline. Their conversation meandered comfortably from Logan's injury to Rebecca's emergency room experiences, finding unexpected common ground in their shared appreciation for simplicity and direct communication. "Most people don't understand how much goes unsaid in emergency situations," she remarked. "Sometimes a look communicates more than words ever could." Logan thought about Atlas on the canyon ledge, about the wordless understanding that had passed between them. "Yes," he agreed. Exactly that. When Rebecca finally left, promising to check on his shoulder in a few days, Logan found himself standing in his doorway longer than necessary, watching her car disappear much as he had watched Victor's earlier, though with entirely different emotions. Atlas nudged his hand gently, drawing his attention back to the present moment. "That was nice," Logan told the dog, feeling slightly foolish for the admission. "Unexpected, but nice." That night, for the first time since they'd been partnered, Atlas abandoned his guard post by the door and jumped onto Logan's bed, settling carefully beside him. "This is new," Logan observed, but made no move to displace the dog. In the darkness, with Atlas's steady breathing beside him, Logan found himself contemplating the day's visitors, Victor with his oddly probing questions and Rebecca with her genuine concern. One had set Atlas on edge, while the other had earned unprecedented acceptance. Logan had long trusted his own instincts about people, developed through years of police work. Now he found himself equally trusting Atlas's judgments, perhaps even more so after the events at the canyon. What neither man nor dog could know was how crucial this growing trust would become in the months ahead, as Victor Blackwood's arrival in their lives revealed itself not as coincidence, but as calculated design, the first move in a long-planned game where the stakes would ultimately be measured in lives. The weeks following the Grand Canyon rescue brought unexpected changes to Logan's life. His shoulder healed gradually, though the deep bruising left a persistent ache during weather changes. Nature's barometer, as Martha called it during their weekly calls. Atlas, having finally claimed his place in Logan's home and life, developed new routines that revealed the depth of his intelligence and observation skills. Each morning, the German Shepherd would bring Logan's boots to his bedside before their 5:30 a.m. alarm even sounded. Each evening, he would conduct a meticulous perimeter check of the property before settling in for the night. "He's hypervigilant," Sergeant Phelps noted during Atlas's quarterly evaluation, "more so than before. Like he's anticipating threats." Logan had noticed this too, subtle changes in Atlas's behavior that went beyond their strengthened bond. The dog had developed a particular alertness around certain locations and people. Victor Blackwood topped that list, though the senior officer maintained nothing but professional courtesy in their interactions. "Atlas has always been an exceptional judge of character," Logan told Rebecca during one of their increasingly frequent dinner meetings. These had begun as casual follow-ups on his injury, but evolved into something neither of them had labeled yet, though both recognized its potential. "Animals perceive things we miss," Rebecca agreed, her clinical mind always seeking explanations. "Their senses aren't filtered through the same social conditioning. They respond to what is, not what seems to be." July brought a heat wave that settled over Somerville like a heavy blanket, pushing temperatures well above 100 degrees for weeks at a time. The department limited canine deployments during the hottest hours, concerned about the effects on the dog's health. Logan used the schedule adjustments to focus on Atlas's specialized training, particularly his already impressive scent detection abilities. It was during this period that Somerville experienced its first significant fire of the summer. A warehouse on the outskirts of town erupted in flames shortly after midnight. Though not on duty, Logan responded to the all-hands call, arriving to find Victor already on scene with his canine partner Rex, directing operations with a commanding presence that had earned him rapid advancement within the department. "Looks like electrical failure," Victor told Logan as they watched firefighters battle the blaze. "Similar to that apartment complex fire last month." Logan hadn't worked the apartment fire, but he recalled the report: faulty wiring in an aging building. "Pattern?" he asked, professional instincts engaged. Victor shrugged. "Just an observation. Old buildings, outdated electrical systems." Recipe for disaster in this heat. Atlas, normally calm at fire scenes after his extensive desensitization training, showed unusual restlessness, repeatedly scanning the gathered crowd with focused intensity. "What is it, boy?" Logan murmured, following his partner's gaze but seeing nothing obviously suspicious among the onlookers. The warehouse fire marked the beginning of what the local paper dubbed Somerville's Summer of Flames. Over the next 6 weeks, 4 more significant fires erupted across town: another warehouse, an abandoned factory, a construction site, and most recently a storage facility. Property damage was extensive, though thankfully no lives had been lost. "The timing is suspicious," Chief Garrison acknowledged during an emergency department meeting in early August. "We're treating these as potential arsons until proven otherwise." Victor, who had become the department's de facto arson specialist, presented a detailed analysis. "The perpetrator is methodical, knowledgeable about accelerants, and careful not to leave evidence. These aren't random acts of vandalism, they're calculated." "Target pattern?" one officer asked. "Commercial properties, primarily, unoccupied during the fires, minimal security." Victor pointed to a map showing the fire locations. "No obvious geographical pattern yet." Logan studied the map, a nagging sense of something not quite fitting. The fires seemed random yet purposeful, targeted in their timing and execution but without clear motivation. Property insurance fraud had been ruled out in at least 3 cases. "What about connection to owner?" Logan asked. "Any overlap in property management, security companies, recent employees?" Victor looked up sharply. "We're exploring all angles, Mitchell. My team has it under control." The defensive tone wasn't lost on Logan or the other officers present. Chief Garrison intervened smoothly. "Let's pool resources on this. Mitchell, since you and Atlas have specialized training, I want you working with Blackwood's team on the investigation." The assignment put Logan in more frequent contact with Victor, whose professional demeanor remained impeccable while revealing little about his personal life or background. Despite months as colleagues, Logan realized he knew almost nothing about the man beyond his impressive service record. Atlas's consistent wariness around Victor continued, though the dog remained professionally responsive during their joint training sessions. Logan had learned to trust his partner's instincts enough to maintain his own subtle vigilance, though he found no concrete reason for concern. In mid-August, Martha called with news that tightened Logan's chest. "The doctor wants to try a procedure," she said, her voice deliberately casual. "Nothing major, a catheter ablation to help with the arrhythmia." Logan knew enough about cardiac procedures to recognize this wasn't routine. "When?" "September 5th. Insurance covers most of it." The slight emphasis on "most" told Logan everything he needed to know about the financial implications. "I'm coming out there," he said immediately. "Absolutely not," Martha countered with familiar stubbornness. "It's outpatient. Beth from church is driving me." They reached the usual impasse, her fierce independence against his concern, but Logan began making arrangements anyway, requesting leave for early September, despite the department's ongoing arson investigation. That evening, still unsettled by his mother's news, Logan took Atlas for their usual run through Thompson Park. The exercise normally cleared his head, but tonight his thoughts remained tangled between Martha's health, the mysterious fires, and Victor's subtle but persistent guardedness. "Officer Mitchell!" The call interrupted his thoughts. Turning, Logan saw Jake Blackwood, Victor's 19-year-old son, jogging toward them. Logan had met the young man only briefly during a department family picnic, noting then the obvious tension between father and son. "Jake," Logan acknowledged, slowing his pace. Atlas, surprisingly, showed none of his usual caution toward strangers connected to Victor. "Sorry to bother you," Jake said, his resemblance to his father striking despite his younger features. "I was hoping to talk to you about something." There was an urgency in the young man's manner that gave Logan pause. "Everything okay?" Jake glanced around the nearly empty park. "Not here. Could I maybe stop by the station tomorrow? Officially?" The request raised immediate red flags in Logan's mind. "Does your father know you want to talk to me?" "No," Jake admitted. "And I'd prefer to keep it that way for now." Logan studied him carefully. "Is this something I should be concerned about?" "I'm not sure yet," Jake replied with surprising candor. "That's why I need to talk to you first." After arranging a meeting time, Logan watched Jake jog away, noting the young man's furtive glances around the park, behavior that suggested he feared being observed. Atlas's reaction to Jake had been notably different from his response to Victor. The dog had remained relaxed, even friendly, during the brief exchange. Logan had long since learned to consider such reactions as valuable data points rather than coincidences. Later that night, Logan shared the unusual encounter with Rebecca over dinner at her small bungalow on the east side of town. Their relationship had developed a comfortable rhythm over the past months, neither rushing nor denying the growing connection between them. "You think it's related to the fires?" she asked, her analytical mind immediately seeking connections. "I don't know," Logan admitted. "But Jake seemed genuinely concerned about something." Rebecca considered this while refilling their water glasses. "You mentioned Atlas likes him?" "Seemed to, which is interesting given how he responds to Victor." Rebecca had become well acquainted with Atlas's exceptional perception. During her frequent visits to Logan's home, she'd witnessed the dog's ability to sense her moods with uncanny accuracy, often responding to emotional shifts before she'd fully registered them herself. "Trust that," she advised simply. The following day, Jake failed to appear for their scheduled meeting. Logan waited 30 minutes beyond the appointed time before concluding the young man had changed his mind. Concerned but respecting Jake's apparent decision, Logan didn't attempt to contact him. That night, Somerville experienced its most destructive fire yet. A lumber yard on the industrial side of town erupted in flames, requiring fire departments from 3 neighboring communities to contain the blaze. Logan and Atlas reported to the scene, finding organized chaos as emergency responders battled wind-driven flames that threatened to spread to adjacent properties. Victor was already on site, directing operations with the confident authority that had become his trademark. "Mitchell," he acknowledged when Logan approached, "we need Atlas checking the perimeter. We've had reports of someone fleeing the scene just before the fire was reported." The deployment made tactical sense, but Logan noted that Victor's own K-9 partner was nowhere to be seen. "Where's Rex?" "Minor injury during training yesterday," Victor replied tersely. "Nothing serious, but he's sidelined for a few days." Logan deployed Atlas on the tracking assignment, following the German Shepherd as he worked the area surrounding the lumber yard. The dog moved with purpose, following a scent trail that led toward an employee parking lot now filled with emergency vehicles. There, Atlas's behavior changed. He circled one particular vehicle several times, his body language indicating strong interest. Logan recognized the car with a jolt of surprise. It belonged to Victor. "What is it, boy?" Logan asked quietly, though he kept his posture casual, aware of nearby firefighters and officers. Atlas pawed at the driver's door once, then looked up at Logan with clear intention. The signal he used when detecting contraband or evidence. Conflicted, Logan faced a professional dilemma. Atlas's indication wasn't officially admissible without cause for a search, and the vehicle belonged to a senior officer with an impeccable record. Yet Logan had never known Atlas to be wrong about such signals. Before he could decide on a course of action, Victor appeared beside them. "Find anything?" he asked, his tone conversational, though his eyes tracked Atlas's position near his car. "Still working the area," Logan replied neutrally. "Atlas picked up something in this direction, but the emergency vehicles may have contaminated the scene." Victor nodded, his expression unreadable. "We've got another potential witness statement. Chief wants us to regroup." As they walked away, Logan noticed Atlas's reluctance to leave the vehicle, another behavioral marker he filed away for later consideration. The lumberyard fire investigation continued into the next day, with evidence technicians working through the debris while detectives interviewed employees and witnesses. Logan, reviewing the growing case file, noticed a pattern that had previously escaped attention. Each fire had occurred within 48 hours of Victor being assigned to patrol that specific area of town. It could be coincidence. Victor's rotations covered much of Somerville over the course of a month. The correlation might be meaningless, or it might be significant. Logan kept this observation to himself, uncomfortable with its implications, yet unable to dismiss it entirely. Instead, he focused on the witness statements, looking for consistent descriptions of individuals seen near the fire sites. That evening, returning home after an extended shift, Logan found a plain envelope pushed under his front door. Inside was a single sheet of paper containing an address, a date, and a time. 1425 Westlake Drive, August 30th, 11 p.m. The note was unsigned. Atlas, examining the paper with interest, showed no alarm, a reaction that Logan had come to interpret as absence of threat. The address belonged to an abandoned manufacturing facility on Somerville's west side, a property that had not yet experienced a fire despite fitting the profile of previous targets. The date was tomorrow night. The implication was clear. Someone was providing information about a potential future arson location. But why the secrecy? And why come to Logan rather than going through official channels? Logan's first instinct was to report the note immediately, but a competing instinct urged caution. If this was a legitimate tip from someone afraid to come forward officially, premature disclosure might silence them permanently. After careful consideration, Logan decided on a middle path. He would conduct preliminary surveillance alone tomorrow night. If he observed suspicious activity, he would call for backup immediately. If nothing materialized, he could report the tip afterward without risking a potential source. The decision weighed on him as he prepared for bed, aware that it departed from standard procedure. Atlas, sensing his unease, remained unusually alert, repeatedly checking the house's perimeter throughout the night. The following day passed in tense anticipation. Logan maintained his normal routine, careful to avoid any behavior that might signal his evening plans. During a department meeting, he studied Victor surreptitiously, noting the man's composed confidence as he presented updates on the arson investigation. "We're implementing increased patrols in high-risk areas," Victor concluded. "The department's limited resources mean we can't cover everything, but we're prioritizing occupied structures and essential infrastructure." The abandoned manufacturing facility on Westlake Drive wasn't mentioned among the priority locations. At 10:30 p.m., Logan parked his personal vehicle several blocks from the address, continuing on foot with Atlas at his side. The German Shepherd moved with silent efficiency, trained for covert operations that required stealth rather than speed. The manufacturing facility loomed dark against the night sky, its fenced perimeter overgrown with weeds. Logan found an observation position with good sight lines to all building entrances, settling in with Atlas to watch and wait. At 10:52 p.m., a vehicle approached with headlights off, moving slowly along Westlake Drive before parking in the shadow of a defunct water tower adjacent to the property. Logan tensed, using compact binoculars to observe as a figure emerged, carrying what appeared to be a duffel bag. The individual moved with practiced confidence, quickly breaching the perimeter fence and approaching a side entrance to the main building. Even in the dim moonlight, Logan recognized the silhouette with a sinking feeling: Victor Blackwood. Logan reached for his phone, preparing to call for backup, when Atlas suddenly tensed beside him, ears forward, detecting something Logan couldn't yet perceive. Following his partner's gaze, Logan spotted a second figure approaching from the opposite direction, slighter, younger, moving with less confidence but equal determination. As the second person drew closer, recognition hit Logan with jarring clarity. Jake Blackwood was following his father. The situation had just become exponentially more complicated. Whatever was unfolding involved not just a fellow officer, but a family dynamic Logan didn't fully understand. Calling for backup now might escalate an already volatile situation. Logan made a rapid decision. "Atlas, stay close," he whispered, beginning to move toward the building while maintaining cover. His plan was simple: observe from closer range, determine Victor's intentions conclusively, and intervene only if necessary to prevent criminal activity or protect Jake, who had clearly been the source of the anonymous tip. As Logan approached the building, he could see Victor had entered through a side door, while Jake remained outside, appearing to struggle with his next move. The young man's body language broadcast his internal conflict, wanting to confront his father yet fearful of the consequences. Logan was considering how to approach Jake without startling him when Atlas suddenly stiffened, his nose working the air currents. The dog's subtle change in posture, a shift from alertness to alarm, triggered Logan's immediate response. "Jake!" he called out, abandoning stealth in favor of urgency. The young man spun toward Logan's voice, his expression shifting from shock to relief. "Officer Mitchell, my father, he's inside, he's going to—" The explosion cut off his words, a muffled whump from within the building, followed by the distinct orange glow of flames visible through grimy windows. Smoke began pouring from ventilation shafts along the roof. "Call 911, Logan commanded, already running toward the entrance Victor had used, Atlas keeping pace beside him. Inside, heat and smoke immediately assaulted them. Logan pulled up the collar of his shirt to cover his nose and mouth, wishing for proper firefighting equipment. "Victor!" he shouted. Blackwood! Atlas moved forward purposefully, leading Logan through the smoke-filled corridor. The dog's superior senses could detect human presence even in these conditions, and Logan trusted his partner's guidance implicitly. They found Victor in what appeared to be a former storage area, now engulfed in rapidly spreading flames. The senior officer was sprawled near an exit door, conscious but clearly injured, a metal support beam pinning his leg. "Mitchell," Victor coughed, genuine surprise in his voice. "What the hell are you doing here?" Logan didn't waste time on explanations, immediately assessing the situation. The beam was too heavy to lift alone, and the fire was spreading quickly along walls lined with what appeared to be old chemical storage, explaining the rapid progression and intense heat. "Jake's outside," Logan said, dropping to examine the beam. He called it in. Something flashed across Victor's face. Anger, fear, resignation, too complex to interpret in the chaotic moment. "The building's unstable," Victor warned, his professional training asserting itself despite the circumstances. "You need to get out. That's an order." Logan ignored the command, searching for leverage to free Victor's trapped leg. Atlas circled anxiously, clearly distressed by the rapidly deteriorating conditions. "Atlas, find another way," Logan directed, hoping the dog's problem-solving abilities might locate an alternative exit or tool they could use. Atlas disappeared into the smoke, returning moments later dragging a length of metal pipe, a potential lever. Logan seized it gratefully, wedging it under the beam and applying his weight. The beam shifted slightly, but not enough. Outside, sirens wailed, growing closer. Help was coming, but the fire was accelerating faster than Logan had anticipated. The air was becoming toxic despite their relatively low position near the floor. "Logan," Victor said, using his first name for perhaps the first time. "Get out. This place is going to flash over any minute." The use of his given name, coupled with the genuine concern in Victor's voice, caught Logan by surprise. It was the first truly authentic moment he'd experienced with the man. "Not without you," Logan insisted, positioning the pipe for another attempt. Victor's expression shifted, something like respect flickering through the pain and smoke. "You're a good cop, Mitchell. Better than I gave you credit for." The admission carried a weight Logan couldn't fully process in the moment. He focused instead on the immediate problem, applying maximum force to the lever, while Atlas, understanding the effort, pulled at Victor's jacket to help extract him once the beam lifted. Their coordinated effort succeeded in creating just enough clearance for Victor to pull free, his face contorted in pain as his injured leg came clear of the crushing weight. The beam crashed back down as Logan released the pipe, nearly catching his hand. "Can you walk?" Logan asked, already positioning himself to support Victor's weight. "Not a choice, is it?" Victor grimaced, leveraging himself upright with Logan's help. Atlas led the way toward the exit, navigating through increasingly dense smoke. They had nearly reached the door when a secondary explosion rocked the building, sending all three of them sprawling. Logan felt, rather than saw, a section of ceiling collapse behind them, cutting off their return path. Disoriented and gasping for breath in the toxic atmosphere, Logan struggled to regain his bearings. A cold nose pressed against his hand, Atlas providing anchor and direction, even now. Logan grasped the dog's harness, using it to orient himself toward the exit that now seemed miles away through the smoke and confusion. "Victor!" Logan called out, his voice raspy from smoke inhalation. A muffled response came from nearby. Logan crawled toward the sound, finding Victor conscious but struggling, his injured leg now bleeding significantly where the falling debris had struck it. "Leave me," Victor ordered, though the command lacked conviction. "Get yourself out." "Not happening," Logan replied, summoning his remaining strength to half-drag, half-carry the larger man toward where Atlas indicated the exit should be. The journey seemed endless, each breath more painful than the last. the heat intensifying as the fire found new fuel. Logan's vision began to narrow, darkness encroaching at the edges as oxygen deprivation took its toll. Just when he feared they wouldn't make it, fresh air hit his face. They'd reached the exit. Atlas pushed through first. Then Logan maneuvered Victor through the opening, finally stumbling out himself into the blessed coolness of the night air. They collapsed several yards from the building, all three gasping for breath. Through blurred vision, Logan saw emergency vehicles arriving, firefighters deploying equipment, paramedics rushing toward them. Jake's pale face appeared in his field of view, the young man's expression a complex mixture of relief, fear, and resolution. "I'm sorry," Jake said, though whether to Logan or his father wasn't clear. "I had to do something." As consciousness began to fade, Logan heard Victor's raspy response. "You did the right thing, son." The words echoed in Logan's mind as darkness claimed him, their unexpected sincerity, the last impression, before everything went black. Logan awoke to the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor and the antiseptic smell of hospital disinfectant. His throat felt scraped raw, each breath a painful reminder of the smoke he'd inhaled. Attempting to orient himself, he blinked against the harsh fluorescent lighting, gradually bringing the room into focus. "Welcome back, Officer Mitchell." A nurse appeared beside him, adjusting his IV line with practiced efficiency. "You've been out for about 6 hours. Dr. Collins will want to know you're awake." Rebecca. The thought of her brought immediate clarity. Logan tried to speak but managed only a painful croak. "Don't try to talk yet," the nurse advised, offering a small cup of ice chips. "Your throat took quite a beating from the smoke." As the ice melted, soothing his parched tissues, Logan's thoughts assembled themselves into coherent questions. Victor, Jake, Atlas, the fire. What had happened after he lost consciousness? The door opened and Rebecca entered, her professional demeanor slightly undermined by the relief that flooded her face upon seeing him awake. "You certainly know how to keep the ER busy," she said, moving to check his vitals herself, despite the nurse's recent assessment. Logan managed a rasping whisper. "Atlas?" Rebecca's expression softened. "He's fine. Chief Garrison took him home with him for now. That dog refused to leave your side until we practically dragged him out of the ambulance." "Victor?" Her face grew more serious. "In surgery, his leg was badly crushed, and he has second-degree burns on his left side, but he'll survive, largely thanks to you." Logan nodded slightly, absorbing this information. "Jake?" "Being questioned by the department. He's not under arrest, if that's what you're asking." Rebecca checked Logan's oxygen levels, her clinical focus returning. "You should rest your voice. Your lungs took a significant hit from the smoke." But Logan persisted, needing to understand what had happened. "The fire?" Rebecca sighed, recognizing his need for information despite her medical concerns. "Definitely arson. From what I've heard, Victor Blackwood has admitted to setting it, along with the previous fires. Jake apparently suspected his father for weeks but didn't have proof until recently." This confirmation of what Logan had begun to suspect still hit him with surprising force. Victor, respected officer, department leader, mentor to younger cops, had been systematically terrorizing Somerville for months. The cognitive dissonance was jarring. Why? The single word scratched painfully from Logan's throat. "I don't know all the details," Rebecca admitted. "Chief Garrison came by earlier to check on you. He mentioned something about Victor having a personal vendetta, but he didn't elaborate." Before Logan could press for more information, the door opened again, admitting Chief Garrison himself. The older man's face showed the strain of the past hours, deep lines carved around his mouth, shadows under his eyes that spoke of more than simple fatigue. "Mitchell," he acknowledged, relief evident in his voice. "Good to see you conscious." Logan nodded in greeting, conserving his damaged voice. "I'll give you a few minutes," Rebecca said, adjusting Logan's IV once more. "But only a few. He needs rest." Her tone made it clear this was a medical order, not a suggestion. After she left, Garrison pulled a chair closer to Logan's bed, settling his bulky frame with a weary sigh. "Hell of a night," he observed. "You went well beyond the call of duty." Logan shook his head slightly, dismissing the praise. He gestured to his throat, then made a writing motion. Garrison understood, retrieving a small notepad and pen from his pocket. "Department issue," he said with a hint of his usual dry humor. "Never leave home without it." Logan wrote quickly, "Victor confession." Garrison's expression grew somber. "Full confession." Once he realized Jake was involved in exposing him. Didn't want his son implicated. He paused, weighing his next words. "There's something you should know, Mitchell. Something that makes this whole mess a lot more complicated." Logan waited, sensing that whatever came next would reshape his understanding of recent events. "Victor Blackwood isn't his real name," Garrison said quietly. "It's Victor Calloway." The name meant nothing to Logan, and his confusion must have shown on his face. "He changed it legally about 8 years ago," Garrison continued. "Before that, he was Sarah's brother, was Logan's wife." The revelation hit like a physical blow, stealing what little breath his damaged lungs had managed to recover. He stared at Garrison, unable to process this connection. "I didn't know either," Garrison assured him. "Background check showed the name change but listed family reasons, nothing suspicious. Happens all the time with divorces, family estrangements." Logan's mind raced, assembling fragments into a new, disturbing pattern. Victor, Sarah's brother, had deliberately inserted himself into Logan's life, into his department. The fires, the calculated professional friendship, all of it had been part of some larger design. He wrote, "Why?" Garrison's expression grew even graver. "According to his statement, he blames you for Sarah's death. Says if you'd been with her in New York instead of working that weekend, she would have survived." The accusation struck at Logan's deepest, most private guilt, the what-ifs that had haunted him for years after losing Sarah. He'd been scheduled to accompany her to visit her brother that weekend, but had taken an extra shift at the last minute. The decision had tormented him through countless sleepless nights. "It's irrational," Garrison continued. "Grief and blame twisted into something dangerous. He admits that now, especially after you risked your life to save his." Logan wrote again. "Jake?" Jake figured it out gradually. Found old papers, overhead phone calls. When he confronted his father, Victor admitted his real identity, but claimed he just wanted to check on his brother-in-law, make sure you were doing okay. Jake didn't buy it, started monitoring his father's movements, eventually connecting him to the fire patterns. The pieces aligned with Atlas's consistent wariness around Victor. The dog had sensed something wrong from the beginning. Logan had interpreted it as simple dislike, but it had been a warning about something deeper, more dangerous. "The kid left you that anonymous tip," Garrison added. "Was trying to catch his father in the act without directly turning him in. Hoped maybe confronting him would end it." Logan closed his eyes briefly, imagining Jake's impossible position, suspecting his own father of arson, torn between family loyalty and moral obligation. When he opened his eyes again, he wrote, "Charges. Multiple counts of arson, reckless endangerment, destruction of property. His confession covers everything. Psychological evaluation pending." Garrison paused. "And he's asking to see you." Logan's surprise must have been evident. "You don't have to," Garrison clarified quickly. "Nobody would expect that. But he's insisting you're the only one he'll explain everything to." Logan considered this request, emotions warring within him. Victor had systematically terrorized the community, endangered lives, all while nursing a vendetta based on a tragedy that had already taken everything from Logan once. Yet this was Sarah's brother, his only remaining connection to the woman he'd loved and lost. He wrote, "When I'm released." Garrison nodded, respecting the decision. "One more thing you should know. Jake's been asking about you too. Kid's torn up with guilt. Feels responsible for putting you in danger." Logan shook his head emphatically and wrote, "Not his fault. Did right thing." "I told him that," Garrison assured him. "But hearing it from you might mean more." After Garrison left, Logan lay back against the pillows, physical exhaustion competing with mental overload. The revelation about Victor's identity had reopened wounds he'd thought long healed, bringing Sarah's loss into sharp relief once more. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Rebecca returned, her expression concerned as she noted his elevated heart rate on the monitor. "That's enough excitement for now," she said firmly. "You need rest." Logan nodded, suddenly too exhausted to resist. As medication flowed through his IV, bringing merciful numbness, his last coherent thought was of Atlas, the one partner who had seen the truth when everyone else had missed it. The next 2 days passed in a blur of medical assessments, brief visits from colleagues, and gradual recovery. Logan's voice returned slowly, raspy but functional. His lungs cleared incrementally, each breathing treatment more effective than the last. Rebecca monitored his progress with professional diligence that barely masked her personal concern. On the afternoon of the third day, Chief Garrison arrived with welcome company. Atlas bounded into the hospital room with uncharacteristic exuberance, immediately placing his front paws on Logan's bed to inspect his handler's condition. "He's been driving me crazy," Garrison complained, though his expression held more amusement than annoyance. "Paced around my house all night, checking the door every time a car passed. Pretty sure he slept maybe 20 minutes total." Logan buried his fingers in Atlas's thick fur, the simple contact more therapeutic than any medication. "Thanks for taking him," he said, his voice still rough but audible. "Least I could do," Garrison replied, settling into the visitor's chair. "Doctor says you're being released tomorrow." "About time," Logan agreed. Hospital confinement had grown increasingly frustrating as his strength returned. "There's something we need to discuss before that happens," Garrison said, his tone shifting to official business. "The department's handling of the Victor situation." Logan stroked Atlas absently, the dog now settled with his head resting on the edge of the bed. "What's the official story?" "That's partly up to you," Garrison replied. "Victor's connection to you through Sarah, we can keep that out of public statements if you prefer. Focus on the arson itself." The consideration surprised Logan. Law enforcement rarely concerned itself with protecting officers' privacy in such matters. "I appreciate that, Chief." "You've been through enough," Garrison said simply. "No need to have your personal history dragged through the media circus this will become." Logan considered the offer. Part of him wanted to keep Sarah's memory separate from Victor's crimes, to preserve what remained of their brief marriage without this new taint. Yet concealment felt somehow dishonest, a continuation of secrets that had already caused too much damage. "Tell the truth," he decided finally. "Just the facts, without speculation. Sarah deserves that much." Garrison nodded, respecting the choice. "There's something else. Jake Blackwood, or Calloway, I suppose, has been staying with one of our victim advocates. Kid's pretty much alone now. His mother died years ago, and with Victor in custody." Logan understood the unspoken question. "Is he asking about staying with me?" "Not directly," Garrison clarified, "but he doesn't have many options. College plans are on hold with this situation. Might be good for him to have someone who understands what he's going through." The suggestion was unexpected. Logan had limited experience with teenagers and no preparation for something resembling guardianship. Yet he felt a responsibility toward Jake, not because of the young man's connection to Sarah, but because of the courage he'd shown in exposing his father's crimes. "Let me talk to him first," Logan said. "See what he actually wants." "Fair enough." Garrison rose to leave. "One last thing. There's been quite the community response to your actions. Donations, meals, offers of help with home repairs. Seems you've been adopted as Somerville's reluctant hero." Logan grimaced at the characterization. "I was just doing my job." "Running into a burning building without gear to save a man you suspected of arson goes well beyond the job description," Garrison pointed out dryly. "Like it or not, you've made an impression." After Garrison departed, Logan spent the remainder of the afternoon with Atlas, the German shepherd refusing to leave his side even when a nurse arrived with dinner. Rebecca stopped by during her shift, her professional assessment gradually giving way to more personal conversation. "My place or yours?" she asked as she checked his final vitals for the evening. Logan blinked, confused by the apparent non sequitur. "For your first few days after release," she clarified, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. "You shouldn't be alone with those lungs still healing." "I've taken some time off and my place has better air conditioning, but Atlas might prefer familiar surroundings." The offer touched Logan deeply. Not just the practical assistance, but the casual way she included Atlas in the consideration, recognizing the dog's importance in his life. "Mine," he decided after a moment's thought. "But only if you're sure. I don't want to impose." Rebecca's smile held a warmth that had nothing to do with professional care. "It's not an imposition when it's someone you care about." The simple admission hung between them, neither elaborate nor casual, a truth offered without expectation. Logan reached for her hand, finding himself without adequate words to respond. Atlas, observing this exchange with canine interest, gave a soft whine of apparent approval. "See?" Rebecca laughed. "Even your partner agrees it's a good idea." The following morning brought Logan's discharge paperwork and a visit from Jake Blackwood. The young man entered hesitantly, his resemblance to Victor evident in his features, but completely absent in his demeanor. "Officer Mitchell," he began formally. "I wanted to apologize." "Logan," Logan interrupted. "And there's nothing to apologize for." Jake shook his head, determined to continue. "I should have come directly to the department with my suspicions. Instead, I tried to handle it myself, and you almost died because of it." Logan gestured for Jake to sit. Atlas, who had been dozing in the corner, rose to greet the visitor with surprising friendliness. "You were in an impossible situation," Logan said. "Suspecting your own father of something like this. There's no playbook for that." Jake absently stroked Atlas's head, finding comfort in the contact. "I didn't know about his connection to you, to Aunt Sarah, until after the fire. He told me everything in the hospital." "Everything?" Logan questioned, wondering just how much Victor had revealed. "About blaming you for not being with her in New York," Jake confirmed. "About changing our names and moving to Arizona specifically to— I'm not even sure what his end goal was. Revenge? Justice? It doesn't make any sense." "Grief rarely does," Logan offered. "I spent years blaming myself for not being with her that day. Your father just directed his blame outward instead of inward." Jake looked up, surprise evident in his expression. "You don't hate him?" The question gave Logan pause. Did he hate Victor? The man had systematically terrorized a community, endangered lives, all driven by a twisted interpretation of a shared tragedy. Yet hatred required energy Logan no longer wished to expend on the past. "I pity him," Logan said finally. "And I'm sorry for what this has done to you." Jake's composure cracked slightly. "I don't know what happens next. College was supposed to start next month, but with the legal bills, my father's case—" He trailed off, overwhelmed by the collapsing structure of his planned future. Chief Garrison mentioned you might need a place to stay, Logan said carefully. My house isn't much, but there's a spare room if you need it, temporary or otherwise. The offer clearly surprised Jake. Why would you help me after what my father did? Logan considered how to explain his reasoning without sounding condescending. Because you're Sarah's nephew, he said simply, and because you did the right thing at great personal cost. That matters. Jake's expression cycled through surprise, confusion, and cautious gratitude. I wouldn't want to impose. It's not an imposition, Logan replied, echoing Rebecca's words from the previous evening. Besides, Atlas seems to have already adopted you. The German shepherd, as if understanding his role in the conversation, had settled beside Jake's chair in a posture of companionable protection. Think about it, Logan suggested. No pressure either way. As Jake left, promising to consider the offer, Logan reflected on the unexpected turns his life had taken in recent days. The past he'd thought safely contained had erupted into his present, yet instead of destruction, it had created new possibilities, connections he wouldn't have anticipated or sought out. Later that afternoon, as Logan prepared for discharge, Rebecca arrived with surprising news. "Your mother's here," she announced. "Arrived about an hour ago. Chief Garrison arranged for someone to pick her up from the airport." Logan stared in disbelief. "Mom's here? In Arizona?" "In the cafeteria getting coffee," Rebecca confirmed. "Apparently she saw the news about the fire and your heroics. Decided waiting for your next visit wasn't acceptable." Before Logan could process this information, Martha Mitchell appeared in the doorway, her diminutive frame belying the formidable will that had carried her across the country despite her health concerns. "Logan James Mitchell," she declared, using his full name as she had during childhood reprimands. "If you wanted me to visit, you could have just asked instead of nearly getting yourself killed." Despite the admonishment, her eyes shone with tears as she crossed to embrace him, careful of his IV lines and monitoring equipment. Logan returned the hug gently, acutely aware of how frail she felt compared to his memories. "You shouldn't have traveled," he murmured, though his objection lacked conviction. "Nonsense," Martha replied, releasing him to examine his condition with maternal scrutiny. "Beth from church had airline miles she never uses, and your Chief Garrison arranged everything else." "Very helpful man." Atlas approached cautiously, clearly recognizing Martha from Logan's video calls, but uncertain of this in-person version. Martha extended her hand to the German shepherd with surprising confidence. "So this is the famous Atlas," she said. "My son tells me you're the real hero of Somerville." Atlas sniffed her hand thoroughly before allowing her to pat his head, apparently approving of this new human connection to his handler. "He has good taste," Rebecca observed from the doorway, having watched the interaction with evident amusement. Martha turned, noticing Rebecca properly for the first time. "And you must be the doctor my son mentions every time we talk." Logan felt a flush of embarrassment. "Mom." "What?" "You do," Martha stated matter-of-factly. "It's nice to finally meet the woman who's managed to get my son talking about something besides work." Rebecca laughed, extending her hand. "Rebecca Collins. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Mitchell." "Martha, please," she insisted, clasping Rebecca's hand warmly. "I understand you're handling my son's aftercare?" The innocent question carried implications that deepened Logan's embarrassment and provoked another laugh from Rebecca. "Among other things," she confirmed with a smile that suggested complete comfort with Martha's direct approach. As the two women discussed his recovery plan with the easy rapport of co-conspirators, Logan found himself observing a scene he could never have imagined mere weeks ago. His mother, whom he'd spent years protecting from worry, chatting comfortably with Rebecca, whose presence in his life still felt wonderfully new. Atlas, once so wary of human connection, now contentedly accepting attention from both women. The fire that had nearly claimed his life had paradoxically illuminated possibilities he'd been too cautious to pursue. Connection, vulnerability, new beginnings. As he prepared to leave the hospital, Logan recognized that more than his body had undergone healing in this sterile room. Something fundamental had shifted in his understanding of family, of home, of what it meant to trust not just a partner but his own capacity for renewal. What waited outside these walls would be complicated: Victor's case, Jake's uncertain future, the department's recovery from betrayal. Yet for the first time since losing Sarah, Logan faced these challenges not with isolated self-reliance, but with a growing network of connections, some chosen, some circumstantial, all valuable. Atlas, sensing his contemplation, returned to Logan's side, pressing against his leg in silent companionship. The gesture conveyed what words could not, that whatever came next, they would face it together. The road to recovery proved more challenging than Logan had anticipated. Despite Rebecca's professional care and Martha's determined nurturing, his lungs rebelled against their trauma, developing a secondary infection that sent him back to the hospital just 3 days after his release. This time, the admission lasted nearly a week, with oxygen supplementation and aggressive antibiotic therapy. "Your body needs time," Rebecca insisted when Logan expressed frustration at the setback. "Smoke inhalation isn't something you can power through with sheer stubbornness." Atlas, who had been allowed limited hospital visits thanks to Rebecca's influence, seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. The German shepherd's typically alert posture gave way to a watchful stillness whenever he was permitted at Logan's bedside, as though conserving energy on his handler's behalf. Martha established herself in Logan's spare bedroom with a casualness that belied her own health concerns. When Logan protested that she should return to the comfort of her own home, she fixed him with the maternal stare that had quelled his childhood rebellions. "I raised you better than to think I'd leave while you're still in that hospital bed," she said firmly. "Besides, Atlas and I have come to an understanding." This understanding appeared to involve Martha sneaking the dog extra treats, despite the strict diet Sergeant Phelps had recommended, but Logan chose not to comment. The unlikely friendship between his mother and his canine partner provided unexpected comfort during his convalescence. Jake Blackwood visited several times, initially awkward but gradually more comfortable as Logan consistently treated him as his own person rather than an extension of Victor's crimes. The young man had accepted Logan's offer of temporary housing, taking up residence in Logan's home office with an air of careful gratitude. "He cleans everything twice," Martha reported during one hospital visit. "And he walks Atlas every evening. Good boy. Just carrying too much weight that isn't his to bear." Logan understood this assessment all too well. He had carried Sarah's death as personal failure for years, a burden that had shaped his isolation and caution. Seeing Jake struggle with similar misplaced responsibility stirred a protective instinct he hadn't realized he possessed. The media attention surrounding Victor's case intensified as details emerged about his methodical arson campaign and his connection to Logan through Sarah. Despite Chief Garrison's efforts to shield Logan from the worst of the coverage, fragments inevitably reached him: speculation about motives, dramatized accounts of the rescue, amateur psychological analyses of Victor's grievance. "It's like they're writing some crime novel instead of reporting facts," Rebecca observed after switching off the local news during one of her visits. "I've had reporters try to ambush me in the hospital parking lot 3 times this week." The public interest extended beyond media curiosity. Logan's hospital room accumulated flowers, cards, and gift baskets from community members grateful for his role in exposing and stopping the arsons that had terrorized Somerville. The department organized a rotation of officers to screen visitors, partly for security but mostly to protect Logan's recovery from well-meaning but exhausting attention. Amidst this chaos of recovery and publicity, an unexpected visitor arrived: Victor's defense attorney, a soberly dressed woman who introduced herself as Catherine Winters. "Mr. Calloway has instructed me to deliver a message," she explained after the formalities. "He's prepared to enter a guilty plea to all charges on one condition, that he be allowed to speak with you privately before sentencing." Logan considered this request, aware of Rebecca and Martha's concerned gazes from across the room. "Why?" "He wouldn't specify," Winters replied, "only that it concerns matters he believes you should know before proceedings conclude." The request carried unsettling implications. What could Victor possibly reveal that hadn't already emerged through investigation and confession? What private knowledge did he feel necessary to share directly rather than through official channels? "I'll think about it," Logan responded finally, unwilling to commit while still physically compromised. After the attorney departed, Rebecca voiced the concern evident in her expression. "You don't owe him anything, Logan. Not a minute of your time, not a moment of your attention." "She's right," Martha added. "That man has taken enough from you already." Logan appreciated their protective instincts but felt the pull of unanswered questions. "It might provide closure," he suggested, "for both of us." The truth, which he kept to himself, was more complex. Victor represented his final living connection to Sarah, someone who had known her as family, who shared memories Logan had never been part of. Despite everything that had happened, that connection held significance he couldn't easily dismiss. By the time Logan was released from the hospital for the second time, 2.5 weeks had passed since the fire at the abandoned manufacturing facility. Somerville had begun to settle into a new normal. Victor's comprehensive confession had accelerated case processing, repair work had commenced on damaged properties, and the department had implemented new security protocols to prevent similar infiltrations in the future. Logan's return home revealed subtle changes in his absence. His kitchen had been reorganized to Martha's specifications, with frequently used items relocated to lower cabinets to accommodate her height. Jake had built a custom ramp for the back porch steps, allowing Atlas easier access to the yard despite the arthritis that occasionally troubled his hips after long deployments. Rebecca had established an informal office in the living room corner, medical references and hospital schedules neatly arranged beside her laptop. These changes, rather than feeling invasive, struck Logan as natural evolutions of space adapting to shared needs. His home, once a carefully maintained monument to solitude, had transformed into something more vibrant and communal. Recovery continued to be gradual rather than dramatic. Logan's lungs improved incrementally, his stamina building through careful exercise regimens designed by Rebecca. Atlas accompanied him on progressively longer walks, both partners rebuilding their strength together. Martha's presence provided both practical support and emotional ballast, her matter-of-fact approach to adversity modeling resilience without pretense. 2 weeks after his second hospital release, Logan received a call from Chief Garrison. "Victor's entered his guilty plea," the chief reported without preamble. "Sentencing is scheduled for next month. He's still requesting that meeting." Logan had been expecting this development but still felt unprepared for the decision it required. "What's your recommendation, Chief?" "Professionally? Decline. Let the legal process conclude without further personal involvement." Garrison paused. "But off the record? Sometimes questions need answers, even painful ones. Just don't go alone if you decide to meet him." After considerable reflection and discussions with both Rebecca and Martha, Logan arranged to visit Victor at the county detention facility the following week. Rebecca insisted on accompanying him, though she agreed to wait in the visitor reception area during the actual meeting. The detention center's sterile environment and procedural efficiency brought Logan's professional perspective into sharp relief against his personal involvement. He had escorted countless suspects through similar facilities, never considering the experience from a visitor's viewpoint. The metal detectors, repeated identification checks, and supervised movements designed for security suddenly felt oppressive rather than reassuring. When Victor was brought into the visitation room, Logan was struck by the physical changes a month of incarceration had wrought. The confident, authoritative officer had been replaced by a man who moved with painful care, his injured leg still healing improperly despite surgery. Prison-issued clothing hung loosely on his frame, suggesting significant weight loss. They regarded each other in silence for several moments after the guard departed to his monitoring position outside. Victor spoke first, his voice rougher than Logan remembered. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "Neither was I," Logan admitted. Victor nodded as though this honesty confirmed something important. "How much do you know about why I did it?" "Chief Garrison mentioned you blamed me for not being with Sarah in New York." Logan kept his tone neutral, factual. "That you felt I could have saved her somehow." A bitter laugh escaped Victor. "That's the simplified version, convenient for reports and psychological evaluations." He leaned forward slightly. "The truth is more complicated." Logan maintained his composure, though his pulse quickened. "I'm listening." "Sarah called me the night before the attacks," Victor began, his gaze focused on some middle distance between them. "She was upset because you'd canceled your trip to work an extra shift. She felt you were avoiding family visits, avoiding me specifically." This revelation caught Logan off guard. Sarah had shown perfect understanding when he'd explained the shift change, had insisted the weekend with her brother would be fine without him. The thought that she had harbored private disappointment challenged his carefully preserved memories. "She was right," Victor continued. "You had a pattern of finding excuses when family gatherings came up. I thought it was because you didn't approve of me. My drinking back then, my failed marriage. But Sarah had a different theory." Logan found himself unexpectedly defensive. "Which was?" "That you were afraid of letting people too close, that losing your father had made you build walls, even with her." Victor's expression held no accusation, only a tired resignation. "She loved you enough to give you space, but it hurt her that you kept part of yourself walled off, even from your wife." The assessment struck uncomfortably close to truths Logan had never articulated, even to himself. His relationship with Sarah, though loving, had maintained certain emotional boundaries he'd never fully acknowledged. "What does this have to do with the fires?" Logan asked, steering away from these painful recognitions. "After she died, I fixated on your absence. Convinced myself that if you'd been there, somehow things would have been different." Victor's hands, resting on the table between them, trembled slightly. "It wasn't rational. Grief rarely is, but it gave me something to focus on besides my own guilt." "Your guilt?" Logan questioned. "I was supposed to meet her for breakfast that morning. Overslept because I'd been drinking the night before. If I'd been there on time, we would have been somewhere else when—" Victor trailed off. The familiar horror of that September morning reflected in his expression. The parallel between their separate guilts, Logan for not accompanying Sarah to New York, Victor for missing their breakfast meeting, created an unexpected bridge of understanding. Both men had built elaborate structures of blame around decisions that, in reality, likely changed nothing about the outcome. "So, you came to Somerville to what? Punish me?" Logan pressed. "Initially, yes," Victor admitted. "I spent years nurturing that hatred, convincing myself you were responsible. Changed our names, built new identities, researched your department. Jake thought the move was for his benefit, fresh start after his mother died. But the fires weren't targeted at me directly," Logan observed. Victor's expression shifted, revealing layers of conflicted emotion. "That wasn't the original plan. I intended something more personal. But then I saw your life. The isolation, the carefully maintained distance from others. You were already living in a prison of your own making." The assessment, delivered without malice, nonetheless pierced Logan deeply. Had he been so transparent in his self-imposed solitude? The fires became something else, Victor continued. A way to prove I could outsmart the department, outsmart you specifically. Each successful arson reinforced my sense of control, of justice being served somehow. He shook his head slowly. Twisted logic, I know. The psychiatrist here has plenty to say about displacement and projected guilt. Logan considered this explanation, finding it both disturbing and sadly comprehensible. Grief's irrational pathways could lead to destructive destinations when left to fester without intervention or perspective. "Why tell me all this now?" Logan asked finally. Victor met his gaze directly for the first time. "Because when you came back into that burning building for me, knowing or at least suspecting I was responsible, it shattered everything I'd constructed to justify my actions. No one in my scenario would have done that. It forced me to see you as a person, not just a symbol of what I'd lost." The admission carried weight beyond the words themselves. Acknowledgement of humanity reclaimed from the ashes of dehumanizing hatred. Not forgiveness precisely, but recognition of the damage vengeance had wrought on victim and perpetrator alike. "There's something else," Victor added, reaching carefully into his pocket and withdrawing a small, worn envelope. "This belongs to you. I've kept it all these years." Logan accepted the envelope with caution, opening it to find a folded photograph. Sarah on their wedding day, laughing at something beyond the camera's frame, radiant in a moment of unguarded joy. He hadn't seen this particular image before. "She sent it to me a week after your wedding," Victor explained. "Said it captured why she loved you, because you made her laugh even when you didn't realize you were being funny." The simple statement unlocked memories Logan had carefully compartmentalized. Sarah's laughter at his unintentional jokes, her delight in catching him in moments of unconscious humor, a dimension of their relationship he had somehow muted in his grief-preserved memories. "Thank you," Logan said quietly, carefully returning the photograph to its envelope. Victor nodded, the gesture containing acknowledgement of both gratitude and the broader context of their impossible situation. "Jake," he said after a moment. "How is he?" "Adjusting," Logan replied honestly. "Staying at my place for now. He's a good kid." Relief visibly washed over Victor. "He deserves better than the legacy I've given him, better than the example I set." "He'll find his own way," Logan assured him. "He's already shown more courage and integrity than most adults manage in a lifetime." Their conversation continued for another 20 minutes, covering practical matters regarding Jake's college plans, Victor's pending sentencing, and the eventual disposition of his personal effects. The interaction maintained a strange civility, neither friendship nor reconciliation, but a negotiated peace between two men permanently connected through loss and its aftermath. As their allotted time drew to a close, Victor offered one final observation. "That dog of yours, Atlas, he knew about me from the beginning, didn't he?" Logan nodded. "He sensed something was wrong. I should have paid more attention." "Animals see what we miss," Victor agreed. "No preconceptions, no emotional filters, just truth." He hesitated before adding, "You've built something good with him, with Rebecca, with the life you're creating now." Sarah would have been glad to see that. The mention of Rebecca surprised Logan, though he realized Victor would have observed their interactions during their professional encounters before the truth emerged. "I'm trying," Logan acknowledged, neither confirming nor denying the implied relationship. As the guard signaled the end of their visit, Victor made a final request. "Tell Jake I'm sorry. Not just for what I did, but for putting him in that impossible position. Tell him none of it was his fault." "I will," Logan promised, rising to leave with the photograph secured in his pocket. The meeting left Logan emotionally drained but curiously unburdened, as though some invisible weight had shifted, if not entirely lifted. Rebecca, waiting in the reception area, asked no immediate questions, simply offering her presence as they navigated the facility's exit procedures. In the car, Logan finally spoke. He kept a photograph of Sarah all these years. One I'd never seen. Rebecca started the engine but didn't immediately pull away from the parking space. "Are you okay?" The question's simplicity belied its complexity. Was he okay? The answer encompassed more than his physical recovery or emotional response to Victor's revelations. It required assessment of his overall trajectory, where he had been, where he was now, where he might be heading. "I think I will be," Logan replied honestly. "Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually." Rebecca reached across the console to take his hand, her grip firm and grounding. That's all any of us can ask for. As they drove away from the detention center, Logan watched the imposing structure recede in the side mirror. Victor would likely spend the next decade or more within those walls, paying for crimes born of grief's most destructive potential. The thought brought no satisfaction, only a complicated melancholy for all that had been lost. Sarah's life, Victor's freedom, years of peace that might have been possible had different choices been made. Yet alongside this melancholy grew something unexpected, a tentative appreciation for the connections that had emerged from these difficult circumstances. Martha's presence in his daily life, Jake's gradual integration into his household, Rebecca's steady companionship, and always Atlas's unwavering loyalty. Together they formed not replacement for what had been lost, but something entirely new. A constellation of relationships defining a different kind of wholeness. That evening, as they gathered around Logan's dining table, Martha serving her signature meatloaf, Jake awkwardly but earnestly assisting, Rebecca teasing them both about proper vegetable preparation, Atlas watchful beneath the table for potential dropped morsels, Logan found himself observing the scene with newfound clarity. This, he realized, was what moving forward actually meant, not leaving the past behind, but carrying it differently, allowing it to inform rather than constrain the present. The photograph Victor had returned now sat on his bedside table, Sarah's joy preserved not as a monument to loss, but as celebration of what had been genuinely good between them. When Martha asked about his meeting with Victor, Logan shared the essential truths, without burdening Jake with unnecessary details. The young man listened intently, his expression cycling through complex emotions before settling into solemn acceptance. "He asked me to tell you he's sorry," Logan concluded, addressing Jake directly. "And that none of this was your fault." Jake nodded, absorbing this message with the maturity that circumstances had forced upon him. "Did it help?" he asked Logan. "Seeing him, I mean?" The question cut to the heart of what Logan had been processing since leaving the detention center. "I think it did," he answered thoughtfully. "Not in ways I expected, but yes." Rebecca, observing this exchange, offered her own perspective. Sometimes closure isn't about feeling better. It's about being able to put something in its proper place so it doesn't take up more space than it should. Her insight resonated with Logan's own emerging understanding. Victor's actions had been inexcusable, the damage real and lasting. Yet the conversation had provided context that, while not erasing responsibility, helped relocate the experience from active wound to historical scar, present but no longer dominating. Later that night, after Martha had retired to the guest room and Jake to the converted office, Logan sat on the back porch with Atlas beside him and Rebecca in the adjacent chair. The Arizona night had cooled to comfortable temperatures, stars visible beyond the ambient light of suburban Somerville. "I keep thinking about what Victor said," Logan admitted. About me building walls, keeping people at a distance. Sarah apparently noticed it too. Rebecca considered this. We all have defense mechanisms. Yours served a purpose for a long time. But not anymore? Logan questioned. That's for you to decide, she replied. Walls can protect, but they can also isolate. The trick is knowing when to lower them, and for whom. Atlas shifted position, resting his head on Logan's knee in a gesture that had become familiar comfort. The German Shepherd, who had once been considered too damaged for partnership, had gradually revealed profound capacity for connection, loyalty, and trust, modeling the very qualities Logan himself struggled to embrace. I'm out of practice, Logan acknowledged, the admission easier in the darkness. At letting people in. Rebecca's hand found his, her fingers intertwining with natural ease. You're doing better than you think. Martha, Jake, me. We're all still here, aren't we? The observation carried gentle challenge beneath its reassurance. These people had entered his life through various circumstances, yet their continued presence reflected active choice, both theirs to stay and his to allow it. Yes, he agreed. You are. In the comfortable silence that followed, Logan felt something shift within his understanding of recent events. The tragedy that had brought Victor into his life, that had nearly claimed both their lives in that burning building, had paradoxically created openings for new connections, new possibilities. Not compensation for past losses, but additions to a life that continued despite and alongside grief. The future remained uncertain, his full recovery still in progress, Jake's college plans requiring reconfiguration, Martha's health concerns ongoing, his professional return to duty pending medical clearance. Yet these uncertainties no longer loomed as threats, but as natural variables in a life being actively lived rather than merely survived. Atlas, ever sensitive to Logan's emotional state, pressed closer against his leg, offering silent companionship. Rebecca's hand remained entwined with his, her presence neither demanding nor passive, but simply authentic. In this moment of quiet connection beneath the Arizona stars, Logan recognized the profound truth that had emerged from the ashes of Victor's vengeance. The walls he had built to protect himself from further loss had actually prevented healing. Only by risking vulnerability, with Atlas, with Rebecca, with Martha and Jake, could genuine recovery begin. It wouldn't be easy. Old habits of emotional self-protection wouldn't disappear overnight. But as he sat surrounded by this unlikely family that circumstances had assembled, Logan felt something he had nearly forgotten how to recognize: hope, not as wishful thinking, but as tangible possibility, as future waiting to be engaged rather than endured. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. For tonight, this moment of shared peace was enough, a foundation upon which recovery in all its forms could continue to build. 2 months after the fire, Logan sat in Chief Garrison's office, Atlas settled at his feet as they awaited the final decision on his return to active duty. The medical evaluations had been cautiously optimistic. His lung capacity had improved to 85% of pre-injury levels, and the persistent cough had finally subsided. The psychological assessment had raised more complex questions, with the department psychiatrist noting both strengths and concerns in Logan's processing of recent events. The way I see it, Garrison began, reviewing the file one last time, you've met the minimum requirements for return to duty. The question is whether that's the right move right now. Logan appreciated the chief's directness. My doctor believes I'm physically ready, with some reasonable accommodations initially. And mentally? Garrison asked, setting the file aside to focus directly on Logan. The question deserved honest consideration. Logan had spent weeks reflecting on this very issue, whether he could effectively return to his role after everything that had happened. The department had been infiltrated by someone with a personal vendetta against him. His professional judgment had been compromised by personal connection, however unwitting. These weren't trivial concerns. "I believe I'm better equipped now than before," Logan answered finally. "More aware of my blind spots, more conscious of how personal history affects professional perspective." Garrison nodded, absorbing this assessment. "And Atlas. The Canine Review Board has some questions about his recent behavioral changes." Logan glanced down at his partner, who remained alert but calm beside him. The German Shepherd had indeed shown subtle shifts in behavior since the fire. Increased protectiveness, heightened vigilance around unfamiliar personnel, occasional resistance to standard protocols. Sergeant Phelps had noted these changes during their recertification sessions, expressing both concern and admiration for Atlas's adaptive responses. "He saved my life," Logan replied simply. "That changes the dynamic between handler and K9, not in ways that compromise his effectiveness, but in ways that deepen our communication. If anything, he's more attuned to subtle cues, more responsive to genuine threats versus perceived ones." Garrison seemed to weigh this answer against his own observations. The department needs experienced officers now more than ever. Victor's actions damaged public trust, and rebuilding that requires visible leadership from people the community already respects. He paused, tapping his fingers thoughtfully on the desk. "I'm approving your return to duty, effective next Monday, limited field deployments initially, with reassessment after 30 days. Relief mingled with apprehension in Logan's response. "Thank you, Chief." "Don't thank me yet," Garrison warned, with a hint of his dry humor. "The press will be all over this. Hero officer returns after saving arsonist's life makes for compelling headlines, whether we like it or not." The media attention had indeed persisted longer than anyone anticipated. Victor's case had captured public fascination, the firefighter turned arsonist, driven by grief to terrorize the community he had once protected. Logan's role in both exposing and saving Victor had transformed him into a reluctant local celebrity, his privacy repeatedly breached despite the department's protective efforts. "I can handle the press," Logan assured him, though with limited conviction. Garrison's skeptical expression suggested he recognized the bravado. "Just stick to approved statements. Let the PR team earn their paychecks." He rose, signaling the meeting's conclusion. "And Mitchell, it's good to have you back." The sentiment, delivered with Garrison's characteristic gruffness, carried genuine weight. Logan nodded his appreciation as he and Atlas departed, navigating the familiar corridors of the station with renewed awareness of belonging tempered by the changes of recent months. Officers greeted him with varying degrees of enthusiasm and curiosity. Some offered simple welcome-backs and handshakes. Others watched from a distance, perhaps uncertain how to engage with someone whose personal tragedy had so dramatically intersected with departmental crisis. Logan understood their hesitation. He represented both resolution and reminder of a difficult chapter in the department's history. Outside, October sunshine bathed Somerville in golden afternoon light. Logan paused in the parking lot, allowing Atlas a moment to reacquaint himself with the familiar surroundings. The German Shepherd conducted a methodical inspection of their department vehicle, circling it twice before looking to Logan for direction. "Just checking things out today, buddy," Logan explained, opening the rear compartment designed for K9 transport. "Back to work for real next week." Atlas entered the vehicle readily, settling into his designated space with evident satisfaction. The simple routine, practiced countless times before the fire, carried new significance, marking another step in their shared journey back to normalcy, or whatever approximation of it might now be possible. As Logan drove home, he reflected on the changes that had unfolded during his recovery. Martha had reluctantly returned to California after 6 weeks, her own health requiring management that Somerville's smaller medical facilities couldn't adequately provide. She departed only after extracting promises of monthly visits and daily video calls, her maternal vigilance undiminished by distance. Jake had enrolled in Somerville Community College for the fall semester, deferring his original university plans but not abandoning them entirely. His presence in Logan's converted office-turned-bedroom had evolved from temporary arrangement to established household pattern, with the young man contributing to expenses through a part-time job at the local veterinary clinic. His initial awkwardness around Logan had gradually given way to cautious trust, their shared connection to Victor creating an unusual bond neither had anticipated, and Rebecca, her role in Logan's life had deepened in ways both expected and surprising. Their relationship had progressed with deliberate care, neither rushing nor resisting the natural evolution from professional concern to personal connection to intimate partnership. She maintained her own residence but spent most evenings at Logan's, her presence transforming the space in subtle, meaningful ways. Medical journals beside crime novels on the bookshelf, her favorite tea in the kitchen cabinet, a second toothbrush in the bathroom. Atlas had adapted to these changes with remarkable flexibility, expanding his protective instincts to include the entire improvised household. He greeted Rebecca with enthusiastic recognition, tolerated Jake with benevolent supervision, and demonstrated special solicitude toward Martha during her stay, often positioning himself near her chair as though appointed personal guardian. Logan pulled into his driveway, noting Jake's bicycle leaning against the garage and Rebecca's car already parked in its usual spot. The sight triggered an unexpected wave of emotion, not the familiar hollowness of returning to an empty house, but the novel anticipation of rejoining a shared space, of being expected and welcomed. Atlas sensed the shift in his mood, pressing closer as they approached the front door. Inside, the sounds of dinner preparation and Rebecca's laughter at something Jake had said created an acoustic landscape of domesticity Logan was still learning to navigate. Not unwelcome, but unfamiliar after years of carefully cultivated solitude. "There they are," Rebecca announced as they entered. She crossed the kitchen to greet Logan with a brief kiss and Atlas with an affectionate ear scratch. "How did it go with Garrison?" "Back on duty next Monday," Logan reported, accepting the glass of water she offered. "Limited deployments for the first month." Jake looked up from the vegetables he was chopping. "That's great news, right?" The question contained genuine interest rather than mere politeness. Over the past months, Jake had shown increasing curiosity about Logan's work, particularly the K-9 unit operations. His position at the veterinary clinic had revealed unexpected affinity for animal care, and he'd begun volunteering at the department's K-9 training facility on weekends, assisting with basic maintenance and observation. "It is," Logan confirmed, "though Garrison's concerned about media attention when we return." Rebecca rolled her eyes expressively. "That reporter from Channel 8 was lurking outside the hospital again yesterday. Security finally threatened to call the police if she didn't leave staff alone." The persistent media interest had created unexpected complications for Rebecca as well, with journalists attempting to leverage her connection to Logan for insider perspectives on Victor's case and Logan's recovery. Her fierce protection of both professional ethics and personal boundaries had earned her administration's respect, but also unwanted visibility. "It'll die down eventually," Logan assured her, though without much conviction. Small communities like Somerville tended to nurture their local legends, for better or worse. Dinner conversation meandered comfortably between everyday concerns and future plans. Jake shared news from his psychology professor's recommendation for advanced placement next semester. Rebecca discussed a promising new pulmonary treatment protocol she hoped might benefit Logan's lingering symptoms. Logan described Atlas's enthusiastic recertification performance, the German Shepherd's tracking skills apparently undiminished by their extended absence from duty. This exchange of daily details, ordinary, unremarkable, essential, had become the framework upon which their shared life was constructed. Logan still occasionally found himself surprised by his participation in this domestic rhythm, by how naturally he had adapted to consideration of others' needs and interests alongside his own. After dinner, as Rebecca and Jake tackled cleanup with good-natured efficiency, Logan's phone rang with Martha's nightly call. Their conversation followed familiar patterns: her detailed report on doctor's appointments and neighborhood happenings, his careful editing of concerning details about his recovery, their mutual pretense that 3,000 miles presented no significant obstacle to family connection. "You sound better," Martha observed near the call's conclusion. "More present." The assessment caught Logan off guard. "Present?" "For years after Sarah died, even when we talked, part of you was always somewhere else," Martha explained. "Like you were standing at a distance from your own life, observing rather than participating." The observation echoed Victor's comments about Logan's emotional walls, about Sarah's perception of his carefully maintained distance. Hearing it from his mother, who had respected his grief-imposed boundaries perhaps too completely, underscored its accuracy. "I'm trying," Logan acknowledged, the simple admission containing layers of meaning they both understood. "That's all any of us can do," Martha replied, her tone suggesting this effort alone represented significant progress. "Give everyone my love. Tell Atlas his grandma misses him." After the call ended, Logan joined Rebecca on the back porch where she had established an evening ritual of stargazing with a medical journal in her lap, professional development combined with personal decompression. Atlas settled between their chairs, his vigilant relaxation a paradox Logan had come to appreciate as the dog's natural state. "Your mother doing okay?" Rebecca asked, setting aside her reading. "Says she is," Logan replied with the skepticism of a son well-versed in his mother's stoic tendencies. "Her next echocardiogram is scheduled for Friday." Rebecca nodded, understanding both the medical significance and the emotional weight this carried. "We could fly out next weekend if you want. I have some time saved up." The casual "we" in her suggestion, the assumption of shared concern, shared responsibility, struck Logan with unexpected force. Rebecca had never met Martha in person before the aftermath of the fire, yet she had seamlessly integrated his mother's well-being into their joint considerations. "That might be good," he agreed. "She'd like seeing you again." They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, the evening air carrying the scent of desert sage from the nearby hills. Atlas occasionally lifted his head to track distant sounds before settling again, his assessment of potential threats so habitual it required minimal conscious attention. "I've been thinking," Rebecca said finally. "My lease is up for renewal next month." Logan turned to study her profile in the porch light, noting the deliberate casualness with which she introduced this topic. "And it seems increasingly impractical to maintain 2 residences when I spend most nights here anyway." She met his gaze directly. "But I don't want to assume anything." The statement contained careful consideration of his long-established boundaries, his historical resistance to permanent entanglements. Rebecca was offering a natural progression while simultaneously providing space for his hesitation, should it arise. Logan found, somewhat to his surprise, that hesitation wasn't his primary response. The thought of Rebecca officially sharing his home, their home as it had increasingly become, felt like acknowledgement of existing reality rather than dramatic change. "I think Atlas would be disappointed if you didn't stay," he replied, deflecting momentarily to humor while processing his own reaction. Rebecca smiled, recognizing the deflection without calling attention to it. Just Atlas? Logan reached for her hand, the gesture more communicative than any words he might assemble. No, not just Atlas. The simplicity of the exchange belied its significance. For Logan, this represented not just practical living arrangements but conscious step toward the future. Victor's actions had inadvertently illuminated, one where connection outweighed caution, where risks of loss were accepted as inevitable companions to meaningful attachment. "We'll need to make some space in the closets," he added after a moment, "and figure out what to do with your furniture." Rebecca squeezed his hand, acknowledging both the practical considerations and the deeper acceptance they represented. One step at a time. Atlas, apparently approving of these developments, shifted position to press against both their legs simultaneously, creating physical connection between them. The German Shepherd's intuitive understanding of human emotional dynamics continued to surprise Logan, though perhaps it shouldn't have. Atlas had consistently demonstrated perception that transcended conventional training. Inside, they could hear Jake talking on the phone, his voice carrying the animated tone he reserved for conversations with his study group partner, Emma. The young man's gradual emergence from the shadow of his father's crimes had been among the most rewarding aspects of recent months, his natural intelligence and compassion finding expression as the burden of secrecy lifted. "He's doing well," Rebecca observed, following Logan's attention toward the house. "Considering everything." "He is," Logan agreed. "Better than I did at his age after losing someone." The comparison between Jake's resilience following Victor's imprisonment and Logan's withdrawal after Sarah's death emerged without conscious intention. Yet the parallel offered valuable perspective on different responses to profound loss. Jake's gradual opening toward new connections contrasted with Logan's years of self-protective isolation. "You did the best you could with what you understood then," Rebecca noted, her tone free of judgment. "We all do." The simple absolution carried weight precisely because it came from someone who recognized both his past limitations and his current efforts to move beyond them. Rebecca had entered his life at a moment of physical crisis, but had remained through the more complex psychological aftermath, witnessing his struggles without demanding perfect resolution. Their conversation drifted to practical matters: Logan's return to duty schedule, Rebecca's upcoming conference presentation, potential weekend plans if Martha's health permitted their visit. Ordinary discussions made extraordinary only by their departure from Logan's long-established patterns of solitary decision-making. Later that night, as Rebecca slept beside him and Atlas maintained his customary vigil from the bedroom doorway, Logan found himself reflecting on the circuitous path that had led to this moment. Victor's vengeful fixation, born of shared grief, twisted into destructive obsession, had paradoxically created openings for connection Logan might otherwise have avoided indefinitely. Not that he felt gratitude toward Victor. The man's actions had endangered lives, damaged property, and betrayed professional trust in ways that defied simple forgiveness. Yet without Victor's intervention, however malevolent its intent, Logan might never have confronted the walls he had built around himself after Sarah's death, might never have recognized how thoroughly he had substituted survival for actual living. Atlas shifted in the darkness, abandoning his doorway post to approach the bed. The German Shepherd rested his muzzle briefly on the mattress near Logan's hand, offering silent companionship before returning to his preferred position. This small gesture of attunement, recognizing Logan's wakefulness and responding with presence rather than demand, exemplified the partnership that had expanded Logan's understanding of connection beyond human limitations. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges: medical follow-ups, department briefings, Jake's midterm preparations, Rebecca's clinical responsibilities. The future beyond held both promise and uncertainty. Martha's health concerns, Victor's ongoing legal proceedings, the department's continued recovery from internal betrayal. None of these circumstances offered guarantees or permanent resolution. Yet as Logan finally drifted toward sleep, he carried a certainty that had eluded him for years. Whatever came next, he would face it not in isolation but in community, not as observer, but as participant. The walls he had built for protection had become limitations. Their gradual dismantling, though sometimes painful, created space for genuine healing. Atlas's steady breathing from the doorway provided counterpoint to Rebecca's softer rhythm beside him. Different cadences of shared existence, of lives intertwined by choice rather than circumstance alone. From down the hall came the occasional creak of floorboards as Jake moved about in his room, another presence in this improvised household that defied conventional definition but functioned with unexpected harmony. This, Logan realized as consciousness faded, was what Atlas had understood from the beginning, that safety came not from isolation, but from trusted connection, that vigilance served life only when balanced with vulnerability. That protection mattered most when it preserved possibility rather than merely preventing pain. In the quiet darkness of a house now filled with other breathing souls, Logan Mitchell slept more peacefully than he had in years, guarded by a German shepherd who had recognized what his human had forgotten, that the heart's capacity for loss was matched only by its capacity for renewal if given the chance to try again.